Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys in a little bit. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez is the phone number if you want to join us. And some of the headlines today, let me see what I can give you first. Well, the left continues to call Trump Hitler. And that's a thing. But there's a couple other things. El Trumpito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, held a Hispanic summit today, Latino roundtable with voters in Miami, Florida, in Doral, his resort there in Doral. And a couple of friends of the program were there. Jesse Holguin from the Lexit movement was there, as well as Bob Unanue, the CEO of Goya Food. Bob is going to be joining us a little bit later to tell us a little bit about what it was like at the summit. But the big news today with respect to that same topic is that Trump has picked up some serious steam with Hispanic voters. Today, President Trump held this roundtable with Latino leaders in Doral, but it comes right on the heels of this big explosive poll. Listen to this, and I mean, I think it's pretty big. Trump is up with Hispanic voters by 11%. Now I know some people, that's one of those right wing polls. That's Trump's pollster. Nope, not at all. It's USA Today. USA Today, Suffolk University, 11-point lead for El Trumpito versus Que Mala Eres, which means how bad she is in Spanish. So I think that's something big. Now, of course, under President Trump's leadership, the Hispanic community saw record low unemployment rate, record high home ownership, historically low poverty. The median real income surpassed $50,000 for the first time in history. And the median household income went up by $6,500 as well during his administration. That was then, right? That was the Trump administration. Now, fast forward to Que Mala Eres and Joel Baboso Biden, and Hispanics, like most Americans, have been left behind by the failed policies of the Harris-Biden administration that fueled inflation, increased crime rates, open borders that bring in these transnational criminal gangs. And you know what I always say, the biggest transnational criminals out there are Que Mala Eres, Joel Baboso Biden, Alejandro Mayorkas as well. And these are the people out there that are the biggest gangsters out there. But I've got a clip that I want to play for you of, let's see, who is it? I don't know who it is, but it's a report coming out of Arizona with respect to how Hispanic voters are responding to Trump. Check this out.
Trump campaign continues to push his message ahead of the election, especially to Hispanic voters in Nevada, a key group that makes up 20% of the electorate in our state. Those efforts continue tonight with a Hispanic Heritage Month event in Henderson, hosted by Team Trump and the group Latino Americans for Trump. The event featured special guest Eduardo Verástegui, a film producer, actor, and human rights activist who appeared through a video chat. Supporters at tonight's event say Trump aligns better with their values.
Most Latinos have very strong family values, and that's what really separates us. It's not so much the party.
With our values and our morals, we should unite, because we have to unite to help this community come together and Latinos come together from all over the world.
So there is the report from, actually I said it was Arizona, it was from Nevada, excuse me, on the Hispanics gaining momentum for Trump. And this is a big thing. And we're seeing things that we've never seen in our country, things that are absolutely out of control. Last night, I got a text message from my buddy Dave. Went to high school with Dave. He lives out in Houston. Sends me a report from Houston. I'll play that a little bit later. It's a little longer. But there's a bunch of stories in the news today about trafficking. Sex trafficking remains a huge thing. And whose fault is that? Of course, it's the Democrats. It's Joe Biden. It's Kamala, the borders are. That's the reality of this. They're the ones that have this parole system that they've opened up to just about everybody. They're the ones that are using the federal government and your tax dollars to bring people into the country from certain places like Nicaragua, Haiti, that they're not even having to cross the border, right? They're just bringing them right in on an airplane. And how do they do it? Well, they, instead of you and me using Expedia.com to go somewhere, they use this app. What is it? The name of the app? I'm forgetting it now. But they use the app and they go ahead and schedule themselves to come in and apply for asylum and whatever they want to do. Everything is done on the app, and voila, it's all done. So anyway, I want you to listen to this report on the trafficking that's going on. Check this out.
You just never expect it to be someone you sleep next to, live next to. It's heartbreaking, honestly. Shock around this quiet pocket of Oxford Circle Tuesday, hours after the news broke of the arrest in a human traffic organization allegedly operating out of this neighborhood.
How did nobody see this for all these years?
Since 2012, they believe the house has been operating.
It's shocking, it really is.
Since at least 2012, the Pennsylvania State Police and Attorney General's office says a sex trafficking ring ran out of a home on the 800 block of Diston Street.
Trafficking can happen anywhere.
In Center City, the two agencies made the announcement of 22 arrests, including of this man, Terrence Jones. They allege the 52-year-old led the enterprise and preyed on women often facing substance abuse issues.
Jones recruited and exploited over a dozen young women for his sex trafficking operation at locations throughout Philadelphia, its suburbs, and South Jersey.
Now, this is just one of the stories that's out there. There's a big thing a couple of days ago in Houston. Of course, the huge story on trafficking today. Former Abercrombie & Fitch CEO Mike Jeffries was arrested on sex trafficking charges. And these allegations, big deal, right? I watched the news conference from the United States attorney who brought the charges earlier today. And again, this is not a surprise to me or to many of you that are listening. I think we've known this is a big problem in our country. But it seems to be like a problem that we have that's on steroids rather than a problem that's getting handled. Mike Jeffries, the former CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch, was arrested on sex trafficking and interstate prostitution charges. Now, this is separate from the 22 people that were arrested in Philly that you just heard about. Jeffries was arrested in West Palm Beach, Florida. Two associates of his as well, Matthew Smith and James Jacobson of Wisconsin, were also arrested in connection with these charges of sex trafficking. Jeffries and Smith made their initial court appearance in West Palm Beach earlier today. Again, he was the controversial CEO of the clothing brand from 1992 to 2014, and he was released on a $10 million bond earlier today. United States Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart ordered that he be confined to home detention, so house arrest, with a GPS ankle bracelet, and that he could not travel without approval and must surrender his passport. So is this the next Diddy? Is this guy connected to Diddy? I don't know. I mean, that's the salacious side of all this. But the more practical side of this is that we have a big problem in our country where people like to buy people, sometimes children, and use them as slaves for sex and for other things. And this is a huge problem. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think this should be happening today. Anyway, these two guys, I'll get into this a little bit more as we progress throughout the evening, but big story. And again, out of Houston, another big story. So I'll touch base with Bob Unanue, the CEO of Goya Foods. He's actually one of the producers, executive producers on that movie, The Sound of Freedom. And I'll get his take on this stuff as well. So we've got a lot to discuss. Plus, You remember that cut of Jamie Raskin not too long ago saying that because of the 14th Amendment, because of Trump being an insurrectionist, quote unquote, although he's never been convicted of that or even charged with it, honestly, that he should be disqualified, and that because the Supreme Court failed to do their job, it's going to be up to Congress to not certify his election. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the big story that Donald Trump is leading the way, that Republicans are leading in early voting, as early voting has kicked off in a lot of places. So there's lots to talk about. We're going to talk with Newsweek editor Josh Hammer, who's also legal counsel with the Article 3 Project. So we got a lot to go. Don't go anywhere, folks. It's Rich Valdez. Keep it locked right here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
He is talking about doing away with the entire Department of Education. He's talking, he means it. This is not a joke. This is a guy who also wants to replace every civil servant, every single one. Thinks he has a right under the Supreme Court ruling on immunity to be able, if need be, if it was the case, to actually physically eliminate, shoot, kill someone who he believes to be a threat to him. I mean, so I know this sounds bizarre. It sounds like if I said this 5 years ago, you'd lock me up. We got to lock him up. Politically lock him up.
All right, that is Joe El Baboso Biden earlier saying that Trump wants to lock me up. Well, we got to lock him up. And then he catches himself and says, well, politically lock him up. Now, while this is probably to use Joe Biden's word here, politically, a political wet dream for my friends in the QAnon movement, this is really interesting stuff, right? Because the only one that's really ever taken action on that is Joe Biden, right? They were both president. They both had a lot of things at their disposal. But the only person that tried to lock anybody up was Biden's DOJ. Now, Trump was in office. He didn't do anything. He barely fired some of the most corrupt people, giving everybody a chance, allowing his attorney general to do what he had to do. So I want to get reaction to this. I want to get into the idea of Democrats using the justice system against Trump, rigging the system against him. Is this too big to rig? And will Democrats use the 14th Amendment line that they've been spewing, like Jamie Raskin was putting out there recently, to try and not certify the election results? To get to the bottom of all of that, we're going to have a nice long chat with Josh Hammer. He's a senior editor at large at Newsweek, senior counsel at the Article 3 Project, and host of the Josh Hammer Show. Josh Hammer, welcome back.
Rich, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks for having me again.
You bet, brother. So let's take it from here. What's your initial reaction to Joe Biden and this little flub of his, this Freudian slip, saying, no, we got to lock him up? I mean, politically.
Yeah, I think Freudian slip is the right phrase to use here, Rich. So the Democrat lawfare complex, as I like to refer to it, on the other show that I host, America on Trial with Josh Hammer, which is my main legal show, I always refer to it as the Democrat lawfare complex. And I like to analogize it to something of a mafia organization, something of a La Cosa Nostra organization, where you have the mob boss on top. That would be Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And you have the capo regimes. That would be the Attorney General of the United States, and Merrick Garland, and people like that. And then you have people like Jack Smith, the alleged special counsel. I say alleged because Judge Aileen Cannon here in Florida, where I live, has found him to be an illegitimate special counsel, but we'll hold that aside for now. And then Jack Smith would be the hitman. And the reason that I kind of lay out all of that in that level of detail is because it's to make a point, which is that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have attempted to insulate themselves. They have attempted to, or at least previously, prior to this slip, they tried to to distance themselves from the nitty-gritty of what the prosecutors on the ground, Jack Smith at a federal level, and then Fani Willis and Alvin Bragg at a local level, what all these prosecutors were doing. Because they didn't want to get their hands too dirty. When you're the president of the United States, or when you're Kamala Harris running for president, you don't want to have to answer for some of the Republic destabilizing tactics that these prosecutors are doing. The fact that Jack Smith is right there out in the open in Washington, D.C. right now, filing these massive legal briefs before Judge Tanya Chutkan in talking about the January 6th case in a way that is flagrantly and blatantly in violation of the DOJ's own internal justice manual, which specifically says if you are a prosecutor, you shall not do anything whatsoever that could have even the perceived effect of putting a thumb on the scale of the election, all of which Jack Smith and these prosecutors are doing. So in the past, Biden and Harris have tried to stay above the fray, but we all knew that was nonsense because this was coming all along from the very top. And the fact that now Joe Biden is finally letting the cat out of the bag here, I think is a huge deal. For those of us who have been paying attention and are not exceedingly gullible, it confirms what we have been saying for a very long time now. But at this point, there is no chance that anyone can possibly make any argument to distance any of these prosecutions, even the state-level ones, the Georgia and New York ones, to distance any of them from the Biden-Harris White House. In fact, earlier this week, Rich, we saw Jim Jordan, the chairman of House Judiciary Committee, actually just made public the deposition that Fani Willis's illicit lover and former special prosecutor in the Fulton County, Georgia case, Nathan Wade, he was deposed before House Judiciary Committee, and as part of this revealed deposition, we now know what we also suspected in that case, which is that he was in and out physically of the White House, meaning that he was talking about his own state-level Georgia prosecution with the White House counsel's office. So you put all these details together and you see a very, very clear picture emerge, which is that this has been a top-down, mafia-like attempted assassination, proverbially in this case, although obviously they have attempted to literally assassinate him multiple times now, including in Butler, Pennsylvania. But all this has been a proverbial attempted assassination, a mafia-esque hit job. And the silver lining, Rich, is that I don't think the American people are currently buying it. I don't think they're going to buy it on November 5th either.
Me either, and I hope not. And reports coming in right now that they might not be buying it right now. More Republicans are voting early. I think there's a record that was broken, over 17 million ballots cast so far favoring the Republican Party. So we're going to talk about that. But I also want to get your take, Josh Hammer, on this idea that the Democrats are going to double down on not certifying the election. We're going to do that right now when we come back from this break, folks. We are on with Josh Hammer, and you guys know Josh Hammer from this show, of course, but he's a senior editor-at-large at Newsweek. He's also senior counsel at the Article 3 Project. He's the host of the Josh Hammer Show. And Josh Hammer, what's the legal show you host?
It's called America on Trial with Josh Hammer.
Outstanding. Make sure you subscribe to those podcasts and support the cause there. Follow him online as well at Josh_Hammer. And keep it locked right here. We're coming right back with Josh Hammer to continue this discussion on, is this election too big to rig, or will Democrats try their shenanigans? I saw a Rasmussen survey that said everybody thinks there's cheating, independents, Democrats, and Republicans. That was interesting. Is all lost? I don't know. Josh Hammer is here to answer the questions. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
What can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress, so it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025, to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means.
That, of course, Congressman Jamie Raskin a couple of months ago saying that it's going to be up to them to not certify the election, to not allow Trump to be president, to disqualify him. Sounds like a work of fiction to me, but it's the Democrats we're dealing with, so nothing's really that far-fetched. Our guest is Josh Hammer, senior editor-at-large at Newsweek. He's the senior counsel at the Article 3 Project, host of the Josh Hammer Show and other podcasts. And Josh Hammer, when you hear this from Jamie Raskin, do you think that there's still a serious concerted effort by Democrats to pull something like this off, which I'm going to presume would include the involvement of current Vice President Kamala Harris, because that's her job to certify those votes, no?
Yeah, Rich, I 100% think that Democrats are still actively thinking, dare I say even plotting, some sort of shenanigans in what I continue to think will be the aftermath of the loss, because I still think that Donald Trump is headed towards a victory here. So, look, I mean, they've been saying a lot of this fairly out in the open for a while. That clip that we heard from Jamie Raskin, if I'm not mistaken, I think we heard it earlier this year, maybe back in February or March or so. But yeah, he's doubled down and tripled down since then. You know, it's worth just briefly touching upon the actual legal theory, or I should probably say purported legal theory that he's talking about here. So he's talking about the so-called insurrection clause theory. This is deep in the bowels of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which is a provision that I can tell you as a lawyer myself, we did not cover in law school because no one ever talks about it, because it's not really relevant to modern times, frankly. Section 1 of the 14th Amendment is the provision that gets all of the high-profile litigation when it comes to the Equal Protection Clause and the Due Process Clause. That's really where the action is. Section 3 was put in place in the aftermath of the Civil War, essentially trying to make sure that former Confederate high-ranking generals and people who were commanding the military would not serve in the United States government when those southern states were readmitted to the Union. And the notion that what happened on January 6th is the functional and, in this case, legal equivalent of the 4-year-long Confederate uprising that ended with Lee's surrender to Grant and Appomattox in Virginia. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to begin to describe the levels of logical delusion and lunacy that are required to make this. It's legally bonkers for all sorts of other slightly more arcane in the weeds reasons as well. It was very obvious at the get-go that this constitutional provision would not even take effect by its own right. Congress had to pass what is known as an enabling act or implementing legislation in order to put it into law, which Congress never did. But more to the point, Rich, this was actually argued at the U.S. Supreme Court in the Trump versus Anderson case back in March. It lost 9-0. This legal theory that we just heard from Jamie Raskin did not even garner a vote from Sonia Sotomayor or Ketanji Brown Jackson. That is how crazy it is. But that is the bizarro world planet that these people are living on, because their Trump derangement syndrome is just that intense. Just one final note before I filibuster too long here on your show, but it's worth recalling that in the aftermath of both the 2000 and 2004 presidential elections, Democrats did this all over again as well. Yeah. This notion that the Republicans are the first people to ever have doubts about the authenticity of an election. Are you kidding me? I mean, there were dozens, if I'm not mistaken, of House Democrats who did not certify the results in 2000 after our close results here in Florida. 2004, there were a lot of Democrats asking questions about the result in Ohio, which was the real swing state that year that tilted the election to George W. Bush. So Democrats have a deep and ignominious history, I might say, of questioning elections themselves. I have no doubt that they're not going to leave any stone unturned in their attempt to try to deprive Donald Trump of his return to the White House come January 2025.
Now, Josh Hammer, when you look at, and I don't doubt what you're saying, I think they have a couple of problems with that. and you tell me what you think. I feel like if Democrats were to do that, I think it involves Harris, right? Because that's kind of her role as vice president in the certification process. That looks really bad if you are, kind of like when Mike Pence, the dilemma that he was in. He was like, oh, this is our election. I'm on this ticket. For me to not do that, he just felt, I think, conflicted about it and didn't, do as Trump suggested. I think Harris would look really, really odd, wouldn't she? If she says, you know what, we're going to opt to not certify this election, and also in the eyes of the public, don't you think the people would say, hold on a second, what's going on here?
So I think I agree with you for what it's worth. I mean, if I actually were to make a concrete prediction as to how this plays out, if Donald Trump wins the election, I do predict you would have what lawyers might call a non-negligible number of House Democrats. Let's call it a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen. I don't know, something like that. More than a handful. I think you'll have more than a handful of Democrats who will not vote to certify the election for X, Y, Z reasons, including this bonkers insurrection theory that we just heard from Jamie Raskin. However, if I were a betting man and I were making a bet as to what Kamala Harris would do in a hypothetical situation where, let's say, a state sent competing slates of electors and she had to choose, I do not actually think that she probably would then take the election for herself if she had that ability. I find that a little hard to believe. So I hear you on that. I guess when I say that there's no stone that these people won't leave unturned. I mean, everything exists up to a point. Look, I mean, maybe I'm too Pollyannish-ish. I mean, I could be wrong.
No, maybe me too. It was very sincere, my question. I wasn't challenging anything. I can't imagine, because I don't think she's polling extraordinarily well now, and I don't think she's very, very popular. Right. So I think if she were more popular, then she could say, oh my gosh, they stole the election, or we've got to not certify it. This guy can't be there. But everything's in Trump's favor right now. It seems like there's momentum, there's popularity, there's policy that people like, and I just don't see how she could pull it off. But I think you're right. Some de minimis number of people could come up and say, we won't do that, but ultimately it amounts to nothing.
Yeah, and that probably is my best guess as to how this thing ultimately plays out. Look, I mean, I've been accused, though, of being too naive before. So, for instance, on the slightly related debate over whether the judge in New York City, Juan Merchan, is actually going to sentence Donald Trump to prison, I continue to think that the answer is actually no, for some kind of specific reasons, such as the fact that Donald Trump has 24/7 Secret Service, and Rikers Island does not permit guns anywhere near those jail cells. So for some very concrete reasons, I actually don't think it's really possible. But people are saying that he's going to do it there as well, and that I am naive for thinking the way I do. So look, I've been called this before, but man, I mean, Rich, I would hate to live in a country where you see a vice president essentially take that election for herself, and I just deep down I just can't see it happening.
Yeah. Folks, we're on with Josh Hammer, senior editor at large at Newsweek, senior counsel at the Article 3 Project, host of the Josh Hammer Show. And Josh Hammer, I want to continue to go down this rabbit hole because, like you're saying, there's crackpots on the left that are saying this stuff, and there's a handful of them. And I'm to be very fair and honest, I get them on my Twitter feed and the comments and my DMs, even calling the show, people on our side that are saying, Trump's still actually the commander-in-chief. He's actually secretly president. This is a military operation. I mean, I hear all sorts of crazy things. So I have to make room for the crazy to decipher out the noise. So I think there's always room for that. And I get accused by them of being too naive to thinking don't put anything past anybody. But that part, I think, is a little out there. So I'm with you on that one. Folks, we're coming right back with Josh Hammer. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
We're speaking about Elon Musk. He's doing this thing in swing states where he's offering $1 million prize to people who sign a petition of his. Does that violate federal law?
Potentially. I mean, it is illegal to pay someone to register, and it is illegal to pay someone to vote. And so if that's what's happening here, I think legal authorities will look into that at the state and federal level. I just think it's a little bit unnerving that someone would try to, manipulate the election process in this way. And again, when we look at, why is this wealthy individual attacking a lowly state election official in the state of Michigan, you can't help but wonder if it's to distract from this issue and the potential legal problems that might arise.
That is Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State for the state of Michigan. She was on the Morning Joke today on MSNBC, again reiterating that it's unnerving that Elon Musk would try to manipulate the election process. Josh Hammer, your thoughts?
So a lot of people are saying that this is illegal, what Elon Musk is doing here. I'm not entirely sure that is the case. I mean, is it gimmicky? I mean, sure, but there's nothing necessarily illegal about a gimmick. The people, Rich, that are saying that Elon Musk is violating federal law here is that they're claiming that he's violating the federal law that prohibits just simply paying people to register to vote. But that's not actually what he's doing, is it? I mean, if he were literally going to like a massively packed church on Sundays or some sort of other rally and with an open checkbook and saying, let me see you register to vote Republican or vote for Trump and here's your check. If you were actually doing that, then maybe. But he's essentially promising a giveaway if you sign a petition that at least at face value has nothing to do with voting for Trump. You're simply espousing your support for the First and Second Amendments. That is technically all the Elon Musk petition does, is that he wants you to say that, quote, by signing below, I am pledging my support for the First and Second Amendments. And I see no legal deficiency with this. I mean, you can think it's, again, you can think it's icky. You might not like money in politics to kind of go full Sheldon White House. But look, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, the left has been doing this for a very, very, very long time when it comes to everything from their souls to the polls initiatives, when it comes to try to get people from the church pews to the voter booth, especially there in the black churches in the South. You want to start talking about George Soros and all of his money that inevitably floats around the American political process. I mean, really, ultimately, when it boils down to it, what it seems to me like the folks on the left are complaining about is that the wealthiest person in the world is not on their side. I mean, that basically, I think, is what their objections boil down to. Maybe some prosecutor will try to bring a case against Elon Musk, but for the reason that I just described, I don't think that case is ultimately going to have merit in court.
And Josh Hammer, I think you'd be in good company. Last night we had former Federal Election Commission Commissioner Hans von Spakovsky on, and he said that it's completely legal and gave a bunch of examples of why. And stating, like you did, that the Democrats have been doing this forever and a day, and it's hypocrisy at its highest to even suggest that it's not. Folks, we're on with Josh Hammer. Now, Josh Hammer, before we wrap, I want to give everybody a chance to make sure they know exactly how to find you, where to listen to your show, and to learn a little bit more about what's coming down the pipe that you're working on.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much, Rich. So I'm on X at Josh_Hammer. My Instagram is Josh B. Hammer. I host two shows, The Josh Hammer Show and America on Trial. With Josh Hammer, I write a weekly syndicated column that goes up in Newsweek and a bunch of other right-of-center publications. And it's a little too early, but I do have a forthcoming book as well that's not related to the legal topics, but it's called Israel and Civilization, The Fate of the Jewish Nation and the Destiny of the West. It's actually now available for pre-order on Amazon.com as well.
I'll make sure you check out Josh's book. And Josh, two questions for you, real quick before you go. The first one being, do you think Trump wins with north of 300 Electoral College votes or less?
Rich, as of right now, the math that I'm looking at, I think he wins every swing state. I think we're looking at least 310 Electoral College votes. If this momentum continues that we're seeing right now, I would not be shocked if a state like Minnesota or Virginia were in play as well, frankly.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, everybody likes to say whatever amount of time is an eternity in politics. But honestly, 14 or 13 days is really not a lot of time in politics when it comes to an election. It's going to be tough to turn the ship around at this point. Not impossible, but tough. Next question was, I guess, a playoff of your book. How badly do you think Harris's abandonment of Israel and really embracing Hamas and Iran, how badly do you think this is going to hurt Democrats, not only in this election, but moving forward?
Well, the polling on this shows that this is but one of many issues where the Democrats are just wildly out of step, just totally out of touch with the American people. The American people, by and large, really by a fairly overwhelming margin, support Israel when it comes to their war against all these various Iranian proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and so forth there. So, just as with the transgender sports issue, the biological males and women's sports, when it comes to open borders, immigration, I mean, there's so many issues where the Democratic elites are just so out of touch. And this is one of them. And I think that they're going to pay a price for it. I mean, I'm not sure exactly that it's going to make a huge it may not be the indispensable factor, the singular factor, but I think it is going to be one of many factors that in totality will likely lead to a Kamala Harris defeat on November 5th. Frankly, if she, God forbid, becomes the next president of the United States, Rich, that is horrible, horrible news, not just for Israel, but frankly for the entire Middle East, because it would just mean an emboldened Iranian regime. It would mean a weakened and subdued Abraham Accords alliance. It would mean more ballistic missiles, more jihadism, more terror, and that is frankly something that no one should want.
Well put, brother. Folks, Josh Hammer, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thanks for being with us, bro.
Thanks so much, Rich.
You got it. All right, amigos, we continue our conversation. I got a couple of things I'm going to share with you. Plus, like I said, we've got the CEO of Goya Foods coming up in a little bit. And we're going to talk about feminism and the role that men play in feminism. You don't want to miss that conversation. All of that's coming up in a little bit. And, of course, open phones across America at the top of the third hour. The phone number for that, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And again, Donaldus Magnus, El Trompito, and the Republicans are breaking records with early voting, right? We got President Donald Trump, former President Trump, Republicans in early voting again, flocking to the polls. This is in Newsmax for in-person voting ahead of Election Day, helping push the national number above 17 million. The early voting turnout is breaking records in swing states such as Georgia and North Carolina. The Republican Party hopes this surge of early votes will fix a mechanical problem that some in the party blame for costing it the 2020 presidential election and key races in 2022. And earlier, I heard Mark Halperin from Newsmax TV saying that if this momentum continues, that we will likely know who the next president of the United States is by lunchtime on Election Day. Wow. Haven't heard of that ever. So let's see. And let me tell you, Mark Halperin, I haven't heard him be wrong either. When he makes these types of bold claims, he's usually right. We're going to find out what's going on with that. And we got Bob Unanue coming up, plus feminism and more. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Tuesday night. And our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And, man, there's a lot of stuff. I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at you right now. May not be able to break it all down to you, but lots of news today. The former CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch, a guy named Jeffries, this man, Michael Jeffries, was arrested on sex trafficking charges. Now, these are pretty serious charges. They're saying that he held people's jobs over them and did lots of very, very things. Check it out. The federal indictment says that along with his romantic partner, Smith and Jacobson, Smith is the romantic partner. Jacobson was described as a recruiter. They operated an international sex trafficking and prostitution business from 2008 to 2015. The indictment alleges that they organized sex events in England, France, Italy, Morocco, St. Bart's, New York City, and the Hamptons for Mr. Jeffries and others. They also employed coercive, fraudulent, and deceptive tactics in connection with the recruitment, hiring, transportation, obtaining, maintaining, solicitation, and payment of men to engage in commercial sex. The men who attended the events were led to believe that it could lead to modeling opportunities or help their careers, or that not complying with requests for certain acts during these sex events could harm their careers, according to the indictment. I mean, isn't this some crazy stuff? Now, that's what broke today. More on that in a second. You also have 22 people that were arrested in Philly and 84 people that were rescued as a result of a years-long sting by the Texas Department of Alcohol, Beverage, and I guess ABC, Alcohol Beverage Control Board. And let me tell you, this is quite a thing. They shut down 9 bars that were apparently engaged in getting patrons to engage in sex once they were there drinking. Listen to this.
Well, breaking now, a major human trafficking operation with cartel ties busted up right here in Houston tonight. Only ABC 13 was there as law enforcement raided 9 different bars and clubs, making multiple arrests and potentially rescuing more than 50 victims from sex slavery. ABC 13's Luke Jones is live at one of those locations on Jensen in North Houston. Authorities saying, Luke, this is an historic mission.
Yeah, truly historic. In fact, the TABC says this may well be the largest operation of its kind in Texas history. Things got started at this North Houston nightclub right around 5:30. We're told that's when police went into all 9 of these bars right there at the same time, and they were quickly able to secure them. Just before 7, the parking lot of the La Condesa nightclub on Jensen near Laura Copy, teeming with police and women they say were held here against their will.
It's sad to see that human beings were held in these kind of conditions.
All the result of a 10-year-long multi-agency investigation into human trafficking, spearheaded by the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission and the FBI. Today, officers raided 9 businesses, making arrests and rescues along the way.
So our primary mission today was to work toward the eradication of this horrible crime that's cartel-driven, and to rescue these young ladies.
The TABC declined to name the cartel behind this, but they say conditions inside these businesses were deplorable, each one containing 10 to 20 potential victims.
They weren't living in there, but that's where sex acts were being conducted.
Authorities say several of the people they arrested had open felony warrants. They're not saying for what, but all 9 businesses raided today won't be allowed to reopen. The TABC says it's filed emergency orders to keep them closed.
And that goes into effect immediately. They are chained and locked.
So that's the report there from ABC News. And this story, again, it's just one of many that are out there. Sex trafficking has always been a big business. I remember back in 2005, so what's that, 19 years ago, I ran for the state assembly in the state of New Jersey. against a local mayor who's doubled as an assemblyman at the time. He's now a state senator. He's still there. But at the time, an investigative reporter had done a deep dive onto his political contributions and found that good old Mayor Stack had contributions from a woman named Luisa Medrano. Now, this woman, Luisa Medrano, was in effect like the pimp. Similar story. She operated 9 bars in the city of Union City, New Jersey, and 3 bars, right, in Union City, and hired the police to provide security. But inside these bars, and I think one of them was the next town over, they would do the same thing. They rented an apartment upstairs, or there was a room in the back where they had underage girls that were brought in illegally from Honduras and Guatemala and other countries. Again, this is 20 years ago. And lo and behold, they were having sex. Some of these girls were becoming impregnated by their Johns and forced to have these abortions or give birth to these children in a toilet and get rid of the babies, just after they were born. I mean, just horrific stuff that went on. And there was a big FBI raid, back then, and they got these people. And when it was brought to, Mayor Stack's attention, that I called him out. I did a press conference as the candidate running against him. I did a press conference on the steps of City Hall, calling him out, saying, why are you taking money from sex traffickers? And he just basically said I was desperate and that he was going to donate the money to a battered women's shelter. But that's how Democrats do. And I'm going back 19, 20 years. This is how Democrats operate. He happened to be a Democrat. Democrats have no problem taking money from sex traffickers. It seems to be a thing. I understand if that's a thing. What I'm going to say is we as a people have to do better. We have to do better where we don't allow that to happen, where we don't vote for people like that, where we have a standard and say, you know what, I really don't care about your politics. I might like them, I might dislike them, but I draw the line when people are affable towards, or somewhat apathetic, better said, towards people that are sex traffickers. This is something we shouldn't support. If there's like an Asian massage parlor in your neighborhood that's not legit, not on the level, then maybe you shouldn't take a political donation from the madam who runs the place, right? Or if there's a bar with women coming in from South America, might even be teenage girls, maybe we shouldn't be providing local police on off-duty side jobs, right? Anyway, keep it locked right here. We're going to talk about trafficking. We're going to talk about the Hispanic Summit, Donald Trump in Miami, and so much more with our next guest, the CEO and president of Goya Foods, Bob Unanue. Don't go anywhere, folks. I am Rich Valdez. Again, our number, taking your calls after that, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Former President Donald Trump continuing his election push today. He's making huge gains with traditionally Democrat voting blocs. So the former president is now leading the VP by 11 points with Latino voters, according to a new USA Today and Suffolk University poll. That same poll is showing Harris's support among black voters is reaching historic lows for a Democratic presidential nominee, with just 72% of likely black voters supporting the vice president. Meanwhile, 57% of voters do not believe Harris has done enough to explain her specific policies as she tries to distance herself from President Biden.
First of all, I will say that it is a metaphor that is meant to also describe my intention to embark on a new generation of leadership. And needless to say, mine will not be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring to it my own ideas, my own experiences.
Trump spent yesterday in North Carolina as well, touring the devastation from Hurricane Helene before speaking to faith leaders.
We have to stop it once and for all. We want a landslide that is too big to rig. Too big to rig. Early voting is underway, so you know what you have to do. So Christians, get everyone you know and vote. You have to vote, or we're not going to have the life that we should have, a life of prosperity and hope, a life of beauty. We're not going to have it. We're going to be fighting for our lives.
And there you have it, a report from Fox News on El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States. And what I find interesting here is being up by 11 points on Latino voters, I think is a big deal, right? And it makes a lot of sense. Why? Because Trump is doing the work, right? He's got this roundtable discussion with Hispanic business leaders and faith leaders in Doral, Florida, with arguably some of the most influential people, Hispanics in the country. And it makes all the sense in the world to me to have them all in the same room. It's Hispanic Heritage Month, and really get the message, right? Not give the message, really. He gets the message. I think Trump is really good at listening to people and listening to where they've come from, listening to their story, listening to their plight, and then allowing them to do what they do best, really kind of getting out of the way, which is why I think he does well, in particular with this group of people. So with that being said, somebody that was at that meeting today is Bob Unanue. You know Bob Unanue from Goya Foods, and he is on the board of America First Policy Institute. He's been a supporter of President Trump. You probably remember the Goya boycott from a couple of years ago, and we had him on the show back then when the left tried to attack him for saying something nice. I think he said, "God bless you, Mr. President," and they took extreme offense to that, tried to boycott him. Conservatives stepped in, did this huge boycott, buying more products than ever. And Bob Unanue is with us. Bob Unanue, welcome, sir.
Rich, thank you for having me again.
You bet. So everybody's watching the videos that are coming out of the roundtable discussion today, and I was doing some coverage of it on TV actually, and when we pivoted to hear what Trump was saying, and everybody had stopped and they began laying hands on the former president and broke out into prayer, which I thought was really nice. It's not something you typically see on television. And it was a real testament to, I think, this community, right? Faith leaders, business leaders, faith and family being such a big part of Hispanic culture. Tell us about the roundtable and what your takeaway was today.
Well, thank you, Rich. Yeah, 4 years ago, as you mentioned, I was at the White House. I was there to become a commissioner, the White House Commission on Hispanic Prosperity. Since then, in this administration, we were fired. I guess they don't like Hispanics or prosperity for Hispanics. But, I had been at the White House before with President Obama with the My Plate initiative, which is about, reducing consumption where there's more obesity and diabetes in the Hispanic community than in other communities. So we had been with President Obama. We, during COVID, when I spoke at the White House, it was July 9th, 2020. And I was there to basically, I wanted to give away food to a country that was, the food banks were empty. And, I wanted to give this gift through the president, through the chief executive. And so we offered at the time a couple million pounds of food. That turned into about 5 million pounds. But it was at a time where there was, nobody was working. And we were an essential business, but, in the food industry. But work is essential. You need a reason to get up every day, God, family, work. And I'm there speaking, and off the cuff, quite honestly, and I'm talking about him as a builder, as my grandfather was, who built the company, started Goya Foods. And the Holy Spirit put this word on my lips, blessed. I said we were blessed with a leader like President Trump.
All right.
And again, that word came on my lips from the Holy Spirit, but it invoked the cancel culture, a spiritual war, in my opinion. But at that moment, I believe God put his hand on Donald J. Trump and on all of us. They immediately called for a boycott. It turned into a boycott because we were just, I said similar things about President Obama, but you can't say anything nice about our past president. So a boycott was formed with AOC, Julian Castro, who is another politician, excuse me, and Lin-Manuel Miranda. But immediately a boycott was formed, and we did so well. The president supported us just by putting, talking about Goya Foods, but as thankful for what we had done. But a boycott formed, and it's amazing because we did so well in our sales, not because mainly there was no food out there. And we did so well, jokingly later on in another interview, I said, we did so well, we made AOC Employee of the Month by boosting our sales. But since then, God has placed his hand on Donald J. Trump, and you go to July 13th at 6:11 in the afternoon, which is, ironically, the St. Paul has a letter to the Ephesians that says, put on the armor of God in this fight against evil. And I think it was a spiritual war, but at that moment, President Trump turned his head toward this graph that was in the back, and at that precise moment, a bullet that was going right for his head as he turned, grazed him. And so I believe that this president has been chosen. I think he's, he's doing all this. He's getting attacked every day.
Right.
And why is he doing this? He's doing it because I believe he loves this country. I believe he loves us. I believe we love him because he wants to, in the words of the famous poet, the Cuban poet, Jose Marti, said there are those born to love and build and others to hate and destroy. And, as a Latino community, we are, in this land of opportunity, but we've become the land of exploitation. And this administration from day one has gone on a battle, a spiritual battle, that destroyed our economy. We declared war on fossil fuels, the Green New Deal, our weakness around the world. And that brought, I believe, Putin into Ukraine. Ukraine was a breadbasket for a lot of Europe. And between Russia and Ukraine, there's 50% of the world's fertilizer, 30% of the wheat, 20% of the corn. So all these things were in jeopardy, and prices soared. The supply chain during COVID was a disaster.
Yeah, Bob, the music means that we got to go real quick. We're coming right back, though. Folks, we're on with Bob Unanue, the president and CEO of Goya Foods. He's a friend of President Trump's, was at the Hispanic Roundtable today. Keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back with our guest, the CEO of Goya Foods, Bob Unanue.
America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez continuing our conversation with Bob Unanue, the CEO and president of Goya Foods. He was there at the Hispanic Roundtable today in Doral, Miami, Florida, with President Trump and a bunch of other Hispanic leaders. And Bob was just telling us about the attack on President Trump, the attack on Goya Foods that happened when he said that we were blessed to have a leader like President Trump. And Bob, I know that you've been outspoken on the trafficking of women and children. This is a big deal with the open border that the Biden-Harris administration has left our country with. This is an ongoing problem that's become a lot worse. Just today, I read an article that, I guess from 2 or 3 days ago, of a big sting operation in Houston where they busted a ring of sex trafficking. Then there was breaking news today of Jeffries, the CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch, also trafficking people. It's coming on the heels of the P. Diddy stuff. we seem to have a genuine problem with trafficking that sometimes I think we're getting closer to solving, and at other times I think it's more out of control than ever. Bob.
Yes, Rich. It's the biggest industry in the world, human trafficking and drugs. It's over $250 billion business. And the biggest victim of this is the Latino community. 70% are women, 25% are children. But, we are the biggest consumers as Americans. But what happened during the Harris administration, Biden administration, this left, I say we're moving away from God, was that the industry of trafficking in drugs just exploded. And why? We opened this border to bring in people, to actively bring people in. And why would we do that? I think we would do that for two reasons: money and power. If you listen to the play Aladdin, the genie says to Aladdin, never drink from the cup of money or power. You'll never be satisfied. There's money in it, all the money in the world, and power, to stay in power and in control. So if you look at the last 4 years, it's exploded. And something that was, we had the border czar, Kamala Harris, as I call her, and I don't say that facetiously. I say it because we're being exploited. The children are being exploited. I was involved in the movie Sound of Freedom as an executive producer, and
Outstanding film.
It raised awareness about this thing. So we go from very little, this problem just exploding before our eyes. And Kamala, who is charged with finding the root cause of this, it's funny because the root cause, if you want to find the root cause of this besides the greed and the power, it's why don't you just look in the mirror? Because she would, they're complicit in this. And I don't just say that. Last year, Tara Lee Rodas testified before Congress that the U.S., and she's a whistleblower from ORR, the Office of Refugee Resettlement under Health and Human Services. She said that the U.S. was the middleman in this trafficking. And the way I see it happen is we bring kids in cheap. The cartels make all this money. We hold them. We hand them off to sponsors, many who are not vetted. We're dropping 40 kids at one address. These aren't homes. These are businesses. And so she testified last year that 85,000 children were missing. I don't believe they were missing. They were sold. Javier Becerra, who was head of HHS Secretary, Health and Human Services, he said to his people, look, Henry Ford would be embarrassed by the lack of efficiency of bringing kids in. So this year, just a year later, under the Inspector General of DHS, Department of Health and Human Services, they did a study, and not 85,000, 325,000 children were missing. So why would they want to bring more people in? Because they're commodities. We're not, we're exploiting these children. I tell you what, the Latino community is fed up with being exploited on the border, and all Americans, and they're also fed up with this inflation and the rising costs, as all Americans are. So we've just seen this country deteriorate, and believe me, they're not interested in us. They're not interested in the Hispanic community, the African American community, in any community. They are profiting off of this, and I think when President Trump gets into office, we got to follow the money, because it's dark, and this is very dark, and it's very bad.
Yeah, I agree with that, Bob. And folks, again, we're on with Bob Unanue, the CEO and president of Goya Foods, who's very active in preserving an America that we all want to live in. And Bob, what's next on the back burner for you? I know that you're doing your thing with Goya Foods. You're on the board of America First Policy Institute. You are producing films like The Sound of Freedom. What's next on the back burner for you?
Well, I think this is an existential election, and for now, my goal, besides I got a great day job. I think we're doing, very well. the United States is the second largest Latino country in the world, and we have every country here. We're behind Mexico, and we're a country of immigrants, and immigrants who've come to this country to prosper and to thrive. And so my focus right now is, and I was born in 1954. I grew up with a different America, and I'm seeing that we're losing it. We're moving away from God. I'm focused on this, besides running the company, focus on this election, that we need to recognize that we are children of God and our value is in God and not in flags or letters or anything else. And we need to love and build, like Jose Marti said, love and build versus hate and destroy. And there's too much hate, there's too much destruction. Yeah. People are coming into this country. I've worked for 48 years. The Social Security, the average check is $1,200, but people come into this country and they're getting over $3,800 in benefits, besides other things. They're staying in hotels while Americans are sleeping on the street. And as we approach winter, we're going to lose good Americans who are on the out. But we're focusing on people who are coming in, and many, many good people, but also El Tren de Aragua, from Venezuela, MS-13, and they're coming into our communities, the northern border, the southern border, and there's a parole system. People coming in from Haiti, Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela are flown in. It's not that, again, that we're inviting people in. We're bringing people in to why? To create anarchy and to destroy this country. How this is moving away from God. This is destroying the fiber of this country. And that's why this election is so essential. It's existential.
Amen to that. Bob Unanue, I want to thank you for being with us tonight. You really are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I look forward to speaking with you again real soon.
Well, my father said years ago, our mission in life is salvation. He's gone 48 years also, but I live by that, and that's the most important thing. We got to respect, love each other, value life. That's the most important. To that.
Thank you, brother. Godspeed to you, and we'll chat again soon. Bob Unanue, everybody. You too. Folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I'm so glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we continue our conversation. And Kamala Harris, in addition to losing Hispanics and black men, according to the poll that came out today from USA Today and Suffolk University, you've also got her push towards gaining back some of the men that she's losing. And the effort, well, there was this one crazy ad that she dropped like last week aimed at men. Plus, you have the effort today by her husband, Doug Emhoff, Ben Stiller, and Andy Cohen from whatever channel he's on with the Real Housewives and all that stuff. And I got to tell you, I don't know if it's an incredibly strong message to get men back, but listen to a little bit of this ad.
I'm a man.
I'm a man.
I'm a man, man.
And I'm man enough.
I'm man enough to enjoy a barrel-proof bourbon.
Neat.
Man enough to cook my steak rare.
Man enough to deadlift 500, then braid the out of my daughter's hair.
You think I'm afraid to rebuild a carburetor? I eat carburetors for breakfast. I ain't afraid of bears.
That's what bear hugs are for.
And I'll tell you another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
I'm not afraid of women.
I'm not afraid of women.
They want to control their bodies? I say go for it.
They're not afraid of women. They just they really thought this was going to get somebody to vote for Kamala Harris. It seems like a joke more than anything. But I want to talk about this, about men and feminism and everything in between with our guest, Janice Fiamengo. She is the author of Sons of Feminism, Men Have Their Say. Janice, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Rich. I'm really pleased to be here.
Likewise, thank you. And Kamala Harris is giving every man a reason to fear and dislike female power. And this is interesting, and this is coming from your Substack. And I want you to kind of give us your take on that.
Well, first of all, I think it is worth saying that ad is, I should mention, by the way, that I don't think it was officially endorsed by the Harris-Walz campaign. It was produced by a group calling themselves Creatives for Harris, and so I think that was just a grassroots group that put this together. And but it is quite an ad. It manages to mock and belittle and condescend to what it imagines is traditional masculinity, with all of those signifiers like bourbon and horses and weightlifting and a truck and a couple of farmers doing different things, and and that's supposedly, that's all there is really to masculinity, is a bunch of these empty signifiers that obviously the creators of the ad don't respect and don't really understand. Like the strongest sense I got from that ad is that these creatives for Harris have never done an honest day's work in their lives, and they don't even understand that some men do, and that having a truck isn't just a thing that you choose to have in order to burnish your image, but it's actually something you use in your everyday work, and that the work you do is really essential to the economy and to the modern society that we are so fortunate to have in North America. So that's one thing about that ad. And so to me, it really speaks to the massive disconnect between the ruling class and a lot of American men. And then the other thing about it, of course, it becomes even more insulting, is when it takes that turn with all these guys saying, I'm a man. And then all of a sudden, but I'm not afraid of women, as if that's the reason that men might be choosing not to vote for Harris-Walz. It has to be because they're so afraid and they don't want women to have rights, and they're afraid of women making choices about what to do with their bodies. I find that the most deeply insulting message that you could ever give to somebody that you were allegedly trying to attract into the Democratic tent. And again, it just indicates, the misunderstanding and contempt that so many people in elite society have for men who do the work that makes our society work. So it's quite an extraordinary thing to see people insulting the very voters that they're trying to attract.
I think you're right. And the people who put on the podcast Pod Save America, it's a bunch of Barack Obama alumna. They're the ones that put that ad together. And again, I agree with you. I don't think it misses the mark, and it's not doing its job of recruiting anyone. And I think it really shows not only that they're, I'm going to say, tone deaf, but I think it's also that they really have no concept of how the other side thinks. And I think it's important, right, if you're going to have a dialogue, even if with people you disagree with, that you have some sort of understanding of the position that they take. And I think this misses the mark on every level. Folks, we're on with Janice Fiamengo. She is the author of Sons of Feminism, Men Have Their Say. And we're going to learn a little bit more about the book and the work that she regularly puts out on her Substack and her social media. When we come back, don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. 833-4Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue our conversation with Janice Fiamengo. She is the author of Sons of Feminism, Men Have Their Say. Janice, take a couple of minutes to tell us about the book, where people can buy it, and how they can follow you.
Oh, well, they can find the book on Amazon, and they can follow me on X, and they can look for my Substack newsletter, which is called the Fiamengo File. And my book and my interests have to do with men's issues. And the point that I make over and over again really is that I'm hoping that men are starting to wake up to the fact that feminism is not about equality at all, and that although contrary to what the ad says, the vast majority of men do not vote based on sex. It's actually women who tend to vote based on sex. And most men don't have a problem with working with competent women or women in positions of well-earned leadership when that's the case. But a lot of men are starting to notice that some of these women in positions of leadership have a problem with them. And so I'm really happy to see that men are starting to recognize themselves as a dissident voting bloc, not well served by feminist policies. And if you take a look, for instance, at the National Strategy on Gender Equity and Equality that's put out by the White House under Biden and Harris, you'll see that there's not a single mention in its discussion of gender equality of any man's issue. Not a single discussion of the fact that men are 80% of suicides. Not a single discussion of the fact men are about 75% of the homeless. They're about 85% of drug overdose deaths. They're 93% of the prison population. They're 97% of workplace fatalities and injuries. Men do have issues that we should be caring about, and it's disturbing to see that feminist leaders don't seem to have very much empathy or concern for male well-being. It tends to be that what feminists think about when they're thinking about what men are for is how men can be got to do more things to improve the lives of women and girls. And they're not very interested in improving the lives of a big issue for me, and I hope that more and more men are waking up to that reality.
Right. Well, Janice Fiamengo, I want to thank you for being here tonight. And again, one more time, let people know your Substack, your website, and how they can get a copy of your book.
The Substack is called the Fiamengo File, and the book is available on Amazon. It's called Sons of Feminism, Men Have Their Say.
Outstanding. Thanks for being here tonight. You're a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you.
Likewise. God bless you. And folks, it's open phones across America, and that's coming up right now. 833-482-5337. 833-4-Valdez. Get your calls in now. I'm coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Thank you for tuning in tonight. It's our, Tuesday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. And here's the phone number if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And there's a few things I want to get into. We've been talking about a lot tonight. We've talked about feminism and the effects it has on men. That was an interesting talk. Then we had some conversation with the CEO of Goya Foods, who was at the Hispanic Roundtable event tonight with former President Donald Trump. And that was also pretty enlightening. Trump is up by 11 points in the latest USA Today Suffolk poll. And Harris is losing. She's at a lower point than she was expected to be. She's at 72% for her take of the African-American vote. Then we had lots of other discussion on the political news of the day with Josh Hammer. And that was really interesting because the Democrats continue to say what Elon Musk is doing is illegal, as well as the idea that they're going to try and not certify a Trump victory. And all of that, to me, leads to why Trump is doing well with many groups, but in particular Hispanics, right? Because Trump did very, very well with Hispanics, and he had his Hispanic Roundtable. It was called the Hispanic Summit today, Latino Roundtable with faith leaders and business leaders. And there's a report from Fox News. Listen to this.
Former President Donald Trump continuing his election push today. He's making huge gains with traditionally Democrat voting blocs. So the former president is now leading the VP by 11 points with Latino voters, according to a new USA Today and Suffolk University poll. That same poll is showing Harris's support among black voters is reaching historic lows for a Democratic presidential nominee, with just 72% of likely black voters supporting the vice president. Meanwhile, 57% of voters do not believe Harris has done enough to explain her specific policies as she tries to distance herself from President Biden. Listen.
First of all, I will say that it is a metaphor that is meant to also describe my intention to embark on a new generation of leadership. And needless to say, mine will not be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring to it my own ideas, my own experiences.
VP Harris will be in Washington, D.C. today and does not have any campaign events on her schedule. Meanwhile, Trump will be holding a roundtable with Latino leaders in Miami, Florida, before traveling to Greensboro, North Carolina for a rally. Trump spent yesterday in North Carolina as well, touring the devastation from Hurricane Helene before speaking to faith leaders.
We have to stop it once and for all. We want a landslide that is too big to rig. Too big to rig. Early voting is underway, so you know what you have to do. So Christians, get everyone you know and vote. You have to vote, or we're not going to have the life that we should have, a life of prosperity and hope, a life of beauty.
That is El Trumpito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States. Again, with his lead amongst Hispanic voters, now leading with an 11-point lead over Kamala Harris, who I like to call Kamala Eres. Now, Kamala Eres is, again, last week we talked about this ad that was made on her behalf by a PAC that is related to a couple of Obama alumni that run a podcast called Pod Save America. There's a bunch of lefties there. And they made this ad, I guess, seemingly trying to make fun of masculine Trump voters, right? It sounds like that's who they're trying to make fun of. But in effect, they're trying to go after voters for Harris. And it just, for the life of me, it just doesn't make much sense. But again, maybe that's their point, is it for it to go over my head. It did. It worked, guys. It went over my head. Listen to this.
I'm a man. I'm a man.
I'm a man, man.
And I'm man enough.
I'm man enough to enjoy a barrel-proof bourbon.
Neat.
Man enough to cook my steak rare.
Man enough to deadlift 500 and braid the out of my daughter's hair.
You think I'm afraid to rebuild a carburetor? I eat carburetors for breakfast.
I ain't afraid of bears.
That's what bear hugs are for.
I'll tell you another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
Boom. They're not afraid of women. And let me tell you, I think that is a real spot. I think it's meant to be funny, but I just don't think it actually works. Anyway, I want to get your thoughts on this and so much more. We've got calls, a few people on the line from Ohio, South Carolina, Idaho, Indiana, Maryland, Montana, and more coming in. I want to get, let's see, where are we going? Let's go to Lance calling us from Kalispell, Montana on KOFI. Lance, go right ahead.
Good evening, Rich. Hey, I just wanted to completely destroy this Kamala ad. Okay, you go to any high school parking lot anywhere in flyover country, and you see the big trucks rolling into the parking lot, and most of the people jumping out of those are young girls. Honestly, I mean, my ex-wife, she drives a full-size truck as well as I do. Okay, you don't have to be a man to drive a damn truck. Okay, and any man that claims he's not afraid of a bear, I promise you he's never been outside in the wilderness and seen a bear, because I guarantee you even a 3-year-old black bear is bigger, stronger, and meaner than you could possibly imagine to be. And I think that's one of your preclusivities about coming to visit us up here in Glacier Park area is your fear of the bears. But here's the thing. Being a man means you're strong enough to lift up the women in your life and put them in a position above you with a certain amount of respect and honor and dignity, because as us on the right believe, she is, as Scripture says, the weaker vessel, but I look at it as like fine china.
Right.
You want to put that stuff up where it's lifted up, observed, acknowledged, protected. You know, we have a preclusivity to putting the women in our lives before ourselves. And being a true man means we can acknowledge where we're weak, where we need to lift others up, and where it doesn't matter what damn temperature our steaks cook to, who gives one turd. You know, it's a matter of personal preference. Am I wrong?
No, listen, Lance, I think you're spot on there. And I mean, it's biblical, honestly, right? It's men, love your wives like Christ loved the church. And you could probably do a bunch of sermons on that verse, but the idea that, you know, women are more tender or more delicate is a fine idea. I think it's a fine idea and one that we should be aware of. And ultimately, I think it's this ad that flies in the face of any of what you're talking about, right? You're saying that, you know, we should honor and respect women and hold them in high regard. And this ad saying, you know, we're not afraid of women and we're just as manly as the next guy. And while it's trying to make fun of somebody somewhere, ultimately, I just don't think it recruits any men for Harris. And the fact that you've got Andy Cohen from the cable TV shows, the reality TV shows, and Doug Emhoff, her husband, and Ben Stiller, who I think Ben Stiller is a funny guy. But none of these guys strike me as the epitome of manliness, right? I think Andy Cohen is openly gay. Ben Stiller is a scrawny comedian, right? None of these guys are Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And the other guy just was recently accused of hitting a woman or something like that. So I just find it incredible that that's the trio of men that they used in their latest attempt to recruit men and to promote abortion. It just really is I don't know. The logic escapes me. Lance, thanks for the call, brother. I appreciate it, and I will make my way out there, bears and all. I'm going to find my way out there. I got to go out to Idaho. I got to go out to Ohio. There's a few places I need to visit, and Kalispell, Montana is definitely one of them. Lance, thanks for your call, brother. Folks, we're going to come back with the rest of your calls and more. We also have a report on this CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch. He, former CEO, running an international prostitution sex trafficking ring, importing men for commercial sex work and holding jobs over their head and doing all sorts of things to leverage them. Really, again, no surprise, but this guy's not Diddy. This guy's the CEO of a fashion brand. They come in all shapes and sizes. Plus, there's some news on Harvey Weinstein. That's coming up next as well. Don't go anywhere. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And again, I'm going to get into the Harvey Weinstein stuff and the CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch in a moment. But last month, I remember, just about a month ago, like 3.5 weeks ago, there was a poll that came out of Atlanta, but a nationwide poll from Scripps News, and Ipsos released a poll that revealed that a majority of Americans support mass deportation of undocumented immigrants. And this holds true within the Hispanic community, within every community, from what you could see here, right? There's, some of the key findings. A larger percentage of voters had more favorable opinion of this plan than most. 58% ultimately were thought this was a good idea. That was, again, 3.5 weeks ago. Now, fast forward to today in, Axios. And Americans are split on the idea of putting immigrants in militarized camps. Now, that's a pretty loaded headline. But even with the loaded headline, it says Americans are split on the idea. Overall, 47% of Americans think we should deport illegal immigrants and put them in militarized camps. How many Democrats? 22% of Democrats think this is the right thing to do. 47% of independents think this is the right thing to do. 79% of Republicans think it's the right thing to do. And overall, 47% of all voters that were polled thought this was the case. Now, according to by race and religion, a third of Hispanics thought this was the right thing to do. So a third of the people believe that this is the right thing to do. Now, today, again, just to reiterate, Donald Trump held his Hispanic summit with what is called Latino Americans for Trump. And these are Americans of Hispanic descent that live in America, that came here the right way, that want to deport people that came here illegally, whether they came from Kenya, whether they came from Mexico, whether they came from anywhere in South America, whether they came from China or anywhere else. Because ultimately, it's about the rule of law. It's about right versus wrong. It's about people who waited online versus people who cut the line. And ultimately, it's about Joe Biden breaking the rules, changing the rules to benefit him and the needs of his political party and the power desire that they have. Let's go to Jerome in Charleston, South Carolina, listening on WTMA. Jerome, go right ahead.
Hey, let me see. Wait a minute. Let me get this. Rich Valdez. That doesn't sound very American to me. I need to see your papers, Mr.
Oh, well,
Valdez.
I'm happy to show them to you because, Jerome, I know you are pretty ignorant on this, as many people are. But my parents were born on the island of Puerto Rico, which, I don't know, since the Spanish-American War has been a part of the United States. Everybody that's born there is a U.S. citizen. There's never been a day in my life or my parents' lives where we weren't American citizens with blue passports. So it's kind of like being born in Alaska or Hawaii or Guam. And even though they were given statehood, Alaska and Hawaii, ultimately, that's the fact for Puerto Ricans.
Yeah, that makes no difference to me. I need to see your papers, Mr. Valdez, if that's
All
your
right.
real name.
Well, you see, all you're doing here, Jerome, is showing the millions of people that are listening that Democrats like you truly are the real racists that are looking at people, looking at their last name, looking to deport people. Trump isn't trying to find out if people are Hispanic or not to deport them. He's just saying, are you here legally or not? And he wants to deport them. How do you defend your racism, Jerome?
Hey, my running mate never compared me to Adolf von Hitler. Sieg Heil. I need to see your papers, Mr. Valdez.
Now, do you think you're going to get anybody to vote for Harris or to not vote for Trump with what you're talking about tonight?
Look, she doesn't need anybody else. She's got me. She's all I got, and I'm all she's got. Like my mama told me before she passed away. I just want to know, Kamala, I'm here for you, baby. Don't worry about what they say about you. Jerome loves you, and he's going to be there for you, no matter what they say. You take that to the bank, Kamala. Thank you, Mr. Valdez. I need to see your papers, by the way.
You're welcome, Jerome. The papers are coming. Just keep waiting, and please do me a favor. Hold your breath. All right, folks. That is who's voting for Kamala Harris. If you want to be in company with Jerome, I swear to you, this stuff isn't staged. That's a real caller from South Carolina. Jerome, thank you, sir. Anyway, we continue. Let's go to Jason calling us from Aurora, Illinois on WLS. Go right ahead, Jason.
I'm wondering why we are listening to Kamala Harris doing multiple interviews. They're scripted, they're teleprompted, and Donald Trump is getting out there and he's talking to the people, and he's talking to us, and he's telling us the truth.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is how it is. I think it's a matter of style and substance. But ultimately, machine politicians work that way. And Kamala Harris is a machine politician. She was chosen by her party. Guess who didn't choose Donald Trump? Not the Republicans. Right? The Republican Party was dying on the vine when Trump came. And he chose the Republican Party because it was a path of least resistance. And I think his views were somewhat more conservative than not. But he'd been, I'm not going to say a lifelong Democrat, but probably an independent that voted Democrat for a long time. And he was a registered Democrat. And ultimately, we get to this place where Trump is a man that knows a lot, right? He's a smart guy. He's run a lot of businesses. Kamala Harris has a lot of experience, but she really doesn't compare to Trump. She's not a showman like he is. This guy had a great TV show. She was a small prosecutor that became a bigger prosecutor, became attorney general, but ultimately she's a machine politician. Without the power of the machine behind her, she's nothing. The difference with Trump is that he took a dying Republican Party and, in many ways, figuratively speaking, breathed new life into this party, brought in his populist movement, and has created this juggernaut in American politics that's really based on him. Now, some will say that's a cult of personality, but I would say he is the movement. He's not a machine politician. He's the machine. Anyway, that's my best response for you, Jason, in Aurora, Illinois. Thanks for listening on WLS. And, folks, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. Your calls and more. And a quick report on this trafficking stuff. Keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Michael Jeffries, the former Abercrombie & Fitch CEO, is out of jail on a $10 million bond. A judge ordering the 80-year-old to house arrest at his Palm Beach apartment on Royal Palm Way. His partner and alleged conspirator, Matthew Smith, was also taken into federal custody and is now on his way to New York. Smith is a citizen of the UK and a permanent resident of the United States. Prosecutors say the couple used the power of the Abercrombie name, pressuring aspiring models into sex acts for money, using drugs and alcohol.
They caused the men to believe that attending these sex events could yield modeling opportunities with Abercrombie or otherwise benefit their careers.
Prosecutors say there are 15 victims with, quote, dozens more that could come forward.
There you go. And that's a report from WPTV 5 in Palm Beach, Florida. And again, that's just today's trafficking story. Of course, a couple of days ago, you had the story about 84 people rescued and 9 bars shut down in Houston, as well as 22 people arrested in Pennsylvania. A lot of trafficking arrests going on, and thankfully, but seemingly not enough, right? It almost reminds me of when they catch that one drug bust at the border, the one truck with all the drugs in it, and there was 10 more that got by, that didn't go detected. Lamentably, I think that's the same case here. So I want to get your thoughts on the trafficking and everything else, as well as the rest of our topics. We're talking about Trump. We're talking about the Latino Roundtable in Miami, Florida, the lawfare that's being used on our election system. Is this going to be too big to rig? Will the Democrats try and not certify Trump? So much we've talked about tonight. I want to go ahead and get into some of those topics with you all. 833-482-5337. And by the way, Tom in South Carolina was on the line for, almost half hour waiting to speak with me. Asked one simple question to clarify his topic, and voila, the guy disappeared. I hate that. I got to tell you, please don't park yourself on one of our lines here. We've got 10 lines and wait a half hour. Invest all of that time to not come on the air and speak your mind. If we just want to know what you're talking about, look, give me an idea so we can, have that conversation, but don't wait until the last minute and then jump off. That's one of those things, as they say in England, it burns my britches. Anyway, let us continue. Where do we go? We're going to go to Winston, calling us from Burlington, Vermont. Go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. I love your program.
Thank you.
So open to different ideas, and you take on all comers, no matter what their position is. But I'm something of an anthropologist, and I wanted to just touch on this idea of the book that this woman wrote, which I think brings up a lot of interesting questions. And I just wanted to point out the ultimate absurdity of trying to have an honest discussion about these issues. There's no way that you can bring these things up in the media, in academia, at work, or anywhere else without being totally ostracized and perhaps even losing your job or anything else. So, we have the example of the Harvard professor who wanted to point out that there might be differences between men and women in various, academia. I don't know if you're familiar, that was about 20 years ago. He was immediately let go from his job as the president of the university. And it's just such a dominant theme these days that men and women are completely equal. There's no difference between them. And if you say anything to the contrary, you're pretty much done as a, viable, legitimate person. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Winston, I agree with you on a lot of points. I think that there are forums that exist where free speech is allowed. I think some of the ones you mentioned are not those, right? The reason that I take people from, as you mentioned, from, walks of life and different thoughts and opinions is because I feel like talk radio, even though George Soros is, attempting a takeover, I still feel like talk radio is one of those places where we're still safe to have open discussion and we're free from the constraints that go with academia or the mainstream media. And, it just to piggyback on a point I made earlier on social media, I sent out a post that said, the day you see me hosting 2020 or 60 Minutes, you can call me part of the media. Until then, I remain a conservative radio talk show host. I don't report the news. I comment on it. And I had to clarify that because every now and again, my critics, typically those on the left, pretty much exclusively those on the left, will always say, this guy Valdez doesn't know anything. He's always talking about the media. He doesn't realize he is the media. Guess what? I'm really not the media. Despite reaching millions of people on this wonderful platform that Westwood One has provided, Cumulus Media, and all the great partners and affiliates that we have that air this program, live and otherwise, there's still so many people that don't hear this message, right? So there's a legitimate reason to continue to try and spread the message. And this is truly an open forum, right? Open Phone America. That's why you're on the line calling from WVMT, and there's so many others on the line. And we're looking to have that conversation. And that's not something that exists in the media. The media is a one-way street. It's a monologue. It's they pick the guests that they want. You'll notice you rarely see me. 20 years ago, I used to be on Univision and Telemundo, and if they wanted a conservative perspective on something, they would invite me on. But that's not the case anymore. Now, if they want the conservative perspective, they bring somebody like Ana Navarro or somebody else that has the same opinion as them, but calls themselves a Republican. And that's lamentably where the legacy media, the corporate media, the mainstream media, however you want to call it, the fake news media, that's where they've ended up today. And I think we still have this bastion of free speech that exists in talk radio where we can have these conversations without censoring people, where we can respect people, where we can say, you know what, I don't think that you're not smart enough or not ready enough to hear what I have to say. I'm going to tell you what I have to say. Whether you like it or not, you hear it. If you don't want to hear it, you don't hear it. And vice versa, right? If you don't want to hear me, you don't hear me. And I think that's the beauty of talk radio, because it really is a two-way street, because we get to have that conversation. And you don't have that in academia. That's a professor. Again, it's a monologue. The media, the mainstream media, that's a monologue. So much of what you're talking about is really these captive audiences where these people can cancel you. Here, it's a little bit more of a free-for-all. So thankfully, we're free from that, at least from my view, Winston.
Well, you're the best. I mean, as you probably realize, you're not perfect.
I realize that every day. I have a mirror.
But you're so much better than all the rest. You're at the top, in my opinion, in trying to have freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is not an easy thing. And as our founding fathers said, one of them, I think it might have been Adams, we've given you this beautiful, beautiful, template on how to run a country if you can hang on to it.
Yes, Benjamin Franklin. It's a republic if we can keep it. Yeah, absolutely right. Winston, thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate it. God bless you, my brother. And shout out to everybody listening in Burlington, Vermont on WVMT. Good call. Good voice, by the way, Winston. You could do like radio advertising, right? Very burly. Let's continue. Where do I want to go? Let's go to John calling us from Horseshoe Bend, Arkansas. KIPR, is that right? Let's double check that. Go for it, John.
Yes. Yes, sir. And I don't need to see your papers.
Oh, thank God.
But anyway, people at one time did not believe in men getting molested as children or trafficked or anything like that. It was just about the women, and they did not look at the whole picture. I had a woman that had a son and a daughter, and she said, I watched my daughter, but I didn't know I had to watch my son to see if he was molested. So at one time, they just thought it was a one-way street. Just women got raped or molested. But from having a neighbor molest me, I know that it happens both ways.
Well, John, thank you for sharing that. And I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to say it's courageous of you to say that. And B, you're 100% right. I've had several guests that have talked about sexual assault on this program early on, right, when I was still filling in for Jimbo. And I remember, and I need to get a clip of that interview, both of them. One of them was an article I read in People magazine. This woman was talking about something she called an epidemic in America. And the epidemic was sibling sexual assault. And I didn't know that was epidemic, but believe it or not, it's happening in record numbers where brothers and sisters are, being the victim of the other's sexual assault. And I had no idea that was, I'm sure it was capable of happening, but I didn't know that it was an actual epidemic problem in our country. And another one interview I did was with a guy who today is he's an attorney and he's a fundraiser for the Democrat Party in California. And he came on about a book he'd written, and his book was about his story of being kidnapped at 4 years old and trafficked to what he called a pedophile farm. And he was kept there from 4 years old to 16 years old. And in those 12 years, he talked about how men would pay to come to this ranch on this farm, and they would take their pick of the boys that were there and have their way with them while they were there. This was their vacation, if you will. So we have a very sick world, and a lot of it's happening right here in the United States. So you're right. I think for years, people didn't realize what was going on. We just called it missing children, child abductions. We never knew what happened. We presumed they were dead. Many people didn't realize that they were being kept in dungeons and jails, makeshift jails. to become sex slaves. But lamentably, that was and is the case, John.
Correct. And did you hear about the one on that was 48 hours or Dateline, where people were going to Asia with underage kids? I mean, anywhere from 2 to 3 years old.
Oh,
did you hear about that one?
No, I didn't. It's that honestly, I try to stay away from horrible news like that because I've got a soft spot for kids. I've had my own. I still have my own. Even though they're bigger, I still have a real soft spot for kids, and it really makes me mad in every sense of that word, like crazy and angry at the same time. So, John, I don't mean to cut you off. I want to continue the conversation with you, but I have to hit a pause right here. John in Horseshoe Bend, Arkansas on KBEU. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
We see Elon Musk coming in here. He's doing these little contests where he's promising people $1 million in some kind of lottery giveaway if they sign up for his list. You have a billionaire just dangling $1 million to those of us and many of us who are struggling to make ends meet if they dance for him. You've got Donald Trump putting on a little McDonald's costume because he thinks that's what people do. They're not trying to empathize with us. They are making fun of us. Donald Trump thinks that people who work at McDonald's are a joke. Elon Musk thinks that dangling money in front of a working person is a cute thing to do.
That's AOC, all out crazy, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the same AOC that famously ran away from me at the Puerto Rican parade when I invited her on my radio show to debate the idea of capitalism versus socialism. She literally trotted across the street, wouldn't talk to me, and sent one of her aides to kind of get in between us. It was really just laughable. And the whole thing was in the New York Post if you saw the article. If not, you could always take a look at it. But the point is, AOC is a fake, phony fraud. She is a fool on top of that. And I like to call her all out crazy. And others in Radioland have copied my nickname of AOC. And that's okay. They do so with permission. But AOC, all out crazy, she says that Elon Musk and El Trompito are making fun of people. Because Elon's saying, hey, look, I'll give you $1 million if you stand by the Constitution and free speech. Or because Donald Trump decides to fix somebody some fries in the drive-thru at a Philly McDonald's. I don't see the problem in it. I mean, I think we've seen Hillary Clinton with her hot sauce in her pocketbook. We've seen politicians do things all the time. I don't see what's bad in Trump, who is known for loving some Mickey D's, and he's done it, for years. And we've even had people on his program saying when he said, I'm going to bring you some food on Trump Force One, and the food after coming out of these beautiful trays ended up being Big Macs. So I thought it was quite apropos. But that's the story there. Anyway, I want to get your calls, reactions to what's going on here. Let's go to Pat, Sedona, Arizona. Go for it.
Hey, Rich, thank you very much. Hey, you know what? I love listening to Jerome. I hope he never stops calling. He is so entertaining. You know what? I love you turned it on him and racist and the way he acts. And that's basically what they've been doing with all of the minorities in this country, and that we do to you guys. And this shows you who they really are.
Yeah, it really does, Pat. It shows you exactly who they are. And it's sad, but hopefully, by having those types of discussions and letting people see, right? That's all you got to do. I like to liken it to giving them enough rope to hang themselves, figuratively speaking, of course. Let them keep talking until people see, wow, one person's trying to have a dialogue, the other person's trying to attack. And who's who, right? He's the Harris guy, I'm the Trump guy. I think it's self-explanatory. Pat in Sedona, Arizona. Love you, brother. Thanks for the call. Folks, going to pause right here. Come right back with the rest of your calls in the speed round. We got Maryland on the line, Ohio, Idaho, Indiana, Montana, and more. 833-482-5337. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, folks, welcome back. It is the speed round, and let me see, where are we going to go? We're going to go to Clayton, calling us from Washington, Indiana, streaming the show on richvaldez.com. Clayton, go for it very quickly.
Hi, I was just actually wanting to comment on two things. One of them being, I'm sorry you had to deal with that guy, Jerome. I am so sorry.
Piece of cake. Don't worry about it. Thank you, though. What's on your mind?
Well, what's on my mind, and I know I kind of have to be quick about this, is I think what Kamala Harris, her little ad, was just the most laughable thing ever. Like, the most laughable self-representation I've ever heard.
And what do you think, Clayton, about the rigging of the election and judicial system?
I think those Democrats are just trying to commit fraud. That's all I think.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on that one, Clayton. Brother, thanks for the call. Good to hear your voice. I hope you'll call in again. Shout out to Clayton in Washington, Indiana, streaming us on richvaldez.com. Let's go on to Jeremy. Jeremy's calling us from Cleveland, Ohio, WNIR. Go for it. What's your thought on the border wall?
Hola, Rich. Awesome to hear about any of those trafficking busts. And, Ohio's had way too much trafficking, and although fentanyl overdoses have dropped, which was very good. But no, my thoughts on the border wall, this is why the open border narrative is so bothersome to me, because I followed closely hundreds of miles of border wall construction. They drained San Bernardino Wildlife Refuge to mix concrete with the water that they just don't have that much of in that Sonora Desert area, and there were sections of it that were not were said that they weren't needed, like in Buenos Aires, where they said there was one abandoned car over 3 years or something, and then after Biden got in, don't you think he only canceled border wall that wasn't approved by Congress and gave money back to the military bases that Trump was taken from to fund the border wall?
I don't think he gave any money back. I think he sold off some of the raw materials that were there, only to buy them again to refund the same project and build the wall. So, if you tell me about wildlife in San Bernardino or the Tren de Aragua Venezuelan gang members being slowed down a little bit more at the border, I'm going with building the wall all day long. And I don't think there's any part of the wall that's not needed. But thanks for your call, Jeremy. I appreciate it. Frank in Cumberland, I'm sorry I couldn't get to you. Sarah, same here. Paul in Boise, hasta la próxima. I'm Rich Valdez.